Welcome to the Rota Rota Cast episode 3. I am really excited for today's episode. It's going to be our first interview with a up-and-coming TikToker and political influencer, Sneakcret. Based out of the UK, she has done some incredible work on TikTok, especially talking about media literacy, and got a small claim to fame going right after the media empire on TikTok of the Daily Mail. And I am more than happy to have a great chat today. One of the other things to announce is that I have started up a rotarotamedia.com, which I'm putting up blog entries, some more longer form stuff, and some stuff that just doesn't work in, any video or podcast format. So enjoy that. And also we are hoping for more donations always on the Patreon. So feel like you can get behind that. Now on with the show.
I'm the perfect person to discuss it.
Well, okay. So let's get started with, I think, a baseline. Who are you, and what do you do? How did you get into this political influencing? You make a ton of content about all sorts of things, everything from understanding how media works and the methods that are being used to kind of convince people of crazy reactionary politics, but at the same time, you also will put together these fun comedy rants and a bunch of cool green screen effects and things. So give me your spiel. What got you going?
Oh my god, do I have a spiel? I think my TikTok just says I'm on the struggle bus. Actually, wait, I do have a bit of a spiel. I have all the basics of did politics at university, was involved in politics when I was younger in organizing and things like that. But it was actually when I grew up in a town where the BNP, the British National Party, were really big, and I kind of found out about them when I was about 13 years old. And I went on a school trip to Poland that was an RE history trip, but it involved going to Auschwitz. And the two things happening at the same time were really shocking to a 14-year-old. We were learning about, I think the thing that has really always stuck with me was that we learned about the pyramid towards the rise of the Nazis and genocide, genocide basically. It talked about the different stages of dehumanization leading all the way up to what justified the act of the Holocaust at that point. And when I was tiny brain 14-year-old, I was like, well, hang on, guys, that seems like some of those steps sound like things that these guys are trying to do in our town, and that doesn't seem okay. And that was the first thing that actually got me interested in wanting to be involved in politics at all, because I had that childhood thing of being someone's got to do something. We need to fix this. And I thought I'll just step up and get it done. But over time, I've always been interested in more than just I'm not very good with understanding specific details of different things. That's something I always say with you, is that you're really, really good at taking me through processes and breaking them down, because I feel like my brain is very responsive to why something is happening, but I can't always remember the what. So the things that I've always been interested in is media, communications, sociology, psychology, politics, history, and the media bias and media literacy part just feels like a kind of conglomeration of those things. Not very good at identifying individual things in a lot of detail, but quite good at seeing patterns. And I think that's where I've found something that I'm interested in, but I also do feel very comfortable talking about and communicating to other people. I also don't see myself as an expert on any of these areas. It's just that I feel like I'm quite good at taking those things and just pushing them to other people. I'm just sort of a messenger between different research papers and things that are quite kind of complex, taking them back and putting them into something a bit more basic. And I think that's really all of the reasons that I care about those things. I don't know if there's much else that I do other than yap. I think professional yapping.
So I know you and I have talked about this before, but I think it'd be nice to get your thoughts about why it's so important in this moment in time where we see just the absolute dominant of the far right to have progressive influencers like you and me. Not to toot our horns, but why it's important to be out there and to be spreading messages, even if it's from other people's research.
The sort of starting point with it is we can't continue with legacy media. Because we know what legacy media is at this point. I think the things that we've seen over the last few years, it's always been that legacy media is in the pockets of very rich people. If you look especially in the UK, the history of the owners of the biggest publications and tabloids, it's like incest. They just kind of swap over and buy different ones, and it's 4 families that have owned this whole thing the entire time. Then Rupert Murdoch turned up. It's very, very obvious that there is a vested interest in maintaining power all these organizations and maintaining influence that allows people to make excuses for their bosses. I think what scares me with social media is that, thinking about like old days of YouTube, it was just like individual creators talking. And then what happened, like Jimmy Kimmel came along, and then like the big media publications realized what they were doing, and they started clipping and putting all of their content on social media. And now we're seeing the same thing with the likes of TikTok, with every other social platform. We're seeing mainstream publications that should be dying out because they are archaic and useless transition into these social media spaces and just flooding the zone again. And they're doing it in a very, very clever way. Like, they're not sharing just overtly political content like they would in their print media. They're like taking like animals, cute animals doing things, gaming clips, and they're pushing it out, and then they're dragging people down a far-right pipeline. I think having progressive influencers and just independent influencers altogether is massive. We don't have funding. We don't have like a Legatum Institute or someone turning up to like fund us to say shit. We don't have PragerU or anything like that. All we can actually rely on is like visibility and engagement from each other against like what are some pretty big kind of mega corporations that we're trying to kind of cut through the noise on. So I think that's why it's important to have us.
Yeah.
But we are all chronically online.
Yes, for our sins and lack of sanity, unfortunately. It's it's a hard thing. I was reading a report that just came out about the German elections, and they were talking about TikTok and the AfD. And from the study, they figured out that it was about 3 out of every 4 videos was something right-leaning politically. And it was so disproportionately high, and it was even more right-wing, like biased towards the right-wing than Elon Musk's X. And if you haven't been on X lately, that's just like big old Nazi site right now. Just is what it is. So it's like, yeah, I mean, we are fighting a very asymmetric battle. We have people who have literal billions and billions of dollars against us. We have people who own the literal social media platforms that are backing people like Donald Trump or other far-right leaders. It's a really, really hard thing. And I think this is, brings me always back. It's like political parties, trade unions, social organizations need to be sponsoring people to be the, public intellectuals, to be the influencers, to be, myself and Sneakcret. But because, like, that's the thing.
Take me serious.
It's like, we're doing this like part-time, not making enough money to do it full-time and having to have regular jobs at the same time. And we're competing against Ben Shapiro, who has a multi-million-dollar annual budget. Like this is the ridiculousness of it.
It's such a tough spot. And it's like, I think, yeah, it's a distraction as well. Like, feeling like the way that it's projected onto people of like, well, you're in an echo chamber. And it's like, the whole world is like the right-wing echo chamber. Like, I'm just stuck in here. I'm talking to other people. But like the whole thing of like pushing far-right content or pushing people down right-wing pipelines, it's crazy. My algorithm is pretty set at this stage. I'll hear my husband like going through his phone, and he is literally like cartoon version of a man, like just watches football and poker clips, which means every 3 videos or so you'll hear someone being like, the thing that I don't really understand about women, and you're like, no, wait, hang on, stop, you're being tricked, you're going down the pipeline, and it just tries it every now and again. And there's like such an interesting combination of the fact that there is literally commercial value in having more views on things. Outrageous things that are pretty immoral and unethical to say as headlines are the things that people watch. So that drives the commercial fight. So it's not even always just a political agenda. But on top of that layer, you've got the fact that TikTok thanked Donald Trump for saving it. And then now now everybody's views have gone down. Like the fact that you could just be cut off tomorrow from like the entire platform that you have, like for you, like 30,000 people, like you just get cut off from that entirely if someone just decides that. Is like really, really scary. It just seems to be getting more. I think there's a need in the next couple of years to get out of social media, but I don't think we can do it yet because there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing I've been advocating a lot for is there needs to be, European-based alternatives for these existing platforms. It's kind of insane that we're dependent upon a bunch of sketchy American companies and one from Singapore. Like it's quite bizarre, and it is the worst kind of like monopoly media consolidation ever. I kept thinking about, even just earlier today, I was thinking about, the old internet was wild because there was a bunch of different places, a bunch of different communities going on, and there was always kind of new stuff to discover. But the modern internet has become a closed garden where there's basically cul-de-sacs of the internet where you are funneled into just like one of a few major sites. And yes, those communities still exist in other places, but the bulk of it, like the huge percentage of most people's experience, is just being funneled through a few companies. And those companies are actively manipulating our reality from one another to make a more addictive platform, to make more money, and also to literally control politics. And it's bonkers. Like, I still find it insane that like even now today with Elon Musk, we still have politicians across the world still on his platform, using it like normal, making government announcements on it like normal. And he is leading a coup against a democratic republic right now. Like, it's fundamental.
Oh, I keep forgetting about the coup. Keep forgetting about the coup, and then you remind me of the coup. It is, yeah. I mean, I think do you think apps has played a really big role in?
What do you mean?
You think the fact that they've been like, not the coup, the fact that we used to have on social media, people would have like bookmarks, right? All of the different forums that they would go to, or like, I don't know, if they were being weird going over to like chat roulette or whatever, they would have everything bookmarked, and there'd be hundreds of bookmarks, and it would all be in your browser. And now that you have social media apps, people don't like switching between apps. So like, that's why it's really hard to get people onto a new app, because it's like, well, I can't check. I want it all in one place.
I felt a bit conspiracy minded when I thought of this yesterday, because I was like, you know what? How did they kill off the forums? Like, and then I was just like, I was just like, the apps don't make sense, because like only so many people get on the App Store. And like, even though there's a bunch of apps in the Apple App Store, it's only like tens of thousands. Like, there used to be millions of websites. Like, everyone had some like GeoCities like site for some hyper specific hobby they had. And or like even on
I think it's bigger.
Yeah, or even on like MySpace, it was like everyone had hyper individualized versions of those websites because everyone got HTML coding for a bit. Which is kind of a bizarre thing to think back upon, but whatever. And then, if you couldn't make an app, like perhaps you could run a really good forum. You probably were a badass forum mod, but you weren't designing an app and then pitching it to the App Store and going through the whole approval thing and then marketing it to be like then it creates a bunch of steps that you need infrastructure for, right? I don't think that's so wild, because like it does privilege people who have the capacity to push their app. And if you can't push your app, instead of like people finding your forum, or I think this also like shows kind of like the resiliency of places like Reddit, right? Because it's still moved towards like a more modern social media website, but like it still also is a bit of the old world. I
think it's things like Discord, I guess, are good for that as well. But I feel like it's created like, it has to be a monopoly, because when people, like someone was saying about like when people like boycotted from Substack and they were like, oh wait, I have nowhere else to go. And it feels like that at the minute with social media. Like, I really don't like the feeling that the only way that I'm able to be active with what I want to talk about is like via free platforms that could just like fuck me off any day.
I was even thinking, okay, like this is gonna sound a bit silly. In my head it's silly, so I'm gonna roll it out. I think to have a more like productive interaction with technology, and like to get away from the idea that we need like all-in-one apps or only like a few, we should embrace that things should have like a little bit of jankiness to them. Like, there should be like a bit of friction. Because I honestly like, okay, so, and this is the stupid part. I play a lot of indie video games, and there's just a certain level jank that you have to accept, but sometimes you will have a great experience and it'll be like wonderful. But you just got to get over the hump of like, some stuff will be broken. And we're not talking about a lot. We're saying like, take a second to flip to the other app that like has its own thing going on, or the smaller website, or like go to a couple more places. I think like we have, and also, this was sold to us by the Silicon Valley guys. It's like hyper efficiency. You want to do this. You want to minimize things. You want minimalism in your life. It's like, no, actually like maximalism, having a whole bunch of things is much more realistic to life. Not having this like hyper streamlined approach to everything.
Yeah. I think this is it. And it fits into this whole thing of like, oh, the echo chamber, like you don't want to have people like people were saying about leaving X. It was like, oh, but you're leaving like you can't see other people's views and stuff. And it's like, well, the X itself as an app, there was a really interesting chart, like visualization thing I saw the other day that was like, it was like liberal, it was an American thing, but it was like liberal accounts, like over 100K on X, and like climate organizations, non-profits, activists, etc. And then it was like right-wing, literally Nazis, then like QAnon things. And there was like it was showing like the bubble of like users and how it was spread. And there's like no overlap anyway. It's like it's not that you're leaving it to create an echo chamber for yourself. It's that it's already an echo chamber. It's just that I'm having to use the same app as everyone else.
Like they have their own platforms, right? Like they have Truth Social, they've got Gab, they've got Rumble, they got, there's a ton of far right exclusive platforms, and like we really like we don't get it. Like we do not fundamentally get it. A lot of us, if you're not, a nerd on the internet. But like even when I try to explain like Discourse as like an important like vector of political organizing and also spreading like misogynistic far right ideology, is like I try to explain to politicians or like slightly older people. I'll be like, look, there are influencers who have Discords with tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, and they are doing self-perpetuating communities. They're always going all the time. And if they have like a really misogynistic or really reactionary slant to them, that is like so many people living in a community for huge amounts of time in their life that is like abhorrent reactionary politics. And if they're living, spending a couple hours a day, multiple hours a day, like, hanging out, chatting with the boys, that it becomes their norm. That's their worldview, and the problem with like thinking like the internet, the digital you is separate from the real you. It's still just you. You're in both of these spaces. Just one has an avatar head and the other one is in meat space.
It's very
and like, because like, like that's why they can't really get like the deep danger of Andrew Tate. It's not just like the illegal stuff he did. It's like that he made himself into like a prophet, and he has a huge, massive, crazy audience.
Yeah. And people spend so long on there. And I think, we are a bit silly with being like, oh no, well, we need to, we're going to talk about the self-policing thing. I'm going to do it. It's this whole thing of like, oh, you need to stay involved. You need to stay part of this all the time. You need to keep exposing yourself to all these terrible opinions because that's how you learn things. It's like, I know what racism is. I don't need, like it's constant, like with the media side of like mainstream media side of it. The whole thing is like, oh, is it too woke? Is it being too representative? Is it got like a woke agenda? And it's like, no, like you can see people who actually get deplatformed, and you can see people who get cancelled and they're on the front page of the news. And then you talk about echo chambers online. It's like, well, no, but the left are too like not understanding of like what people really care about. But meanwhile, the right have like fucked off to like 19 different apps, and they're just sitting around talking about Nazis. Like it's this constant idea of like, well, stop running away from it. Like everybody else has run away. Everybody else is ignoring you. Like you need to push yourself. You don't have to go and sit in these spaces. You need to just amplify what you've already got. I think that's a big feeling that's changed for me in the past couple of months. I'm not bothered about convincing these people anymore. I want our people to feel strong. And that's it's so annoying to have someone come in and go, well, I actually think that you're not being understanding. Have you considered understanding the perspectives of the people? No, fuck off. Sorry, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah. We're all adults. So, like, for example, one thing that I'm very frustrated about the like canceling discourse is that people view like, I won't get into that just yet, but like people view it as, for example, that like someone get canceled, then like you said, like they go on a fucking media tour for weeks, and everyone knows, even the most rando right-winger now has like been on every paper and all the news everywhere. They're nonstop 24 hours a day on like the right-wing press and all their social
cancellation.
And it's a whole media storm. And we have not realized this is just a marketing tactic. They proclaim someone's been canceled, and then they create a circus around it. And then we all have to have some weird artificial meta debate of like, did they get canceled? Are they canceled? Like, are people canceling? Like, is the left or the liberals really doing all this canceling? And then it's like, it's completely manufactured. Like, most of the time, there is never a canceling. It never existed. And like, even the concept, like even when we started using this term really regularly, we were talking around Me Too, and most of those guys got away with it. This was a non-existent thing. It was always artificial. And we need to stop like just leaning into these right-wing narratives. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
Made up nonsense about cancellation, and we have had a meta debate about it for years at this point.
There's That's what pisses me off so much. It's like with like people like fucking Shapiro. I mean, I think maybe there's an extent to which Shapiro believes what he says, which is embarrassing for him. But like, okay, Piers Morgan in the UK. Piers Morgan will say the most outrageous shit, or Nigel Farage, or like Lee Guy, 30p Lee. I've forgotten his last name actually. Like any
he's a human walking ham.
He's just an absolute haunted man. But he will say something almost randomly. Like, there is no strategy, there's no context. He's just said something because he's an idiot. And you have to then engage in all the discourse about it. And like, I mean...
Hey, viewers, imagine Donald Trump, but British, but also somehow more bewildering in the stuff he says.
Very pale one as well. Very, very haggard. Oh no. Yeah, like this vibe of, like, they'll say something outrageous, and then it's the same with all these right-wing dog whistles about like refugees and immigration, where it's like, the people who are having the argument with you on like social media, half of them probably aren't even real, dead internet, don't know what's going on there. Half of them are real, but the people who have actually given them that message don't give a shit. Like, they're not saying it because they don't think it. So you're having to like wade through these debates of like, well, actually, we have to educate people. And it's like, no, actually, we don't have to educate people about individual topics one at a time, which is why I think the whole media literacy and critical thinking thing is so important, because you can deal with one person and maybe they'll go, oh, okay, cool. And then the next thing that'll happen is there'll be like 19 new issues that are just like total right-wing talking points. They've set the agenda there. You have to debate all your way through them. You need to teach people like the actual pattern in the first place. Because otherwise you're just constantly just like batting all this shit at people from being said by someone who literally doesn't care. They just want to keep their money and they have to blame someone for why the money's gone. That's all it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's also so deeply frustrating because the trick that they need to do is they need to make politics not about material reality. And that is why you can just get stuck in like nonstop moral panics or, fear mongering around like migrants or Muslims or whatever. Because like they need to make it not about an actual material running of the country, because they don't actually have answers for those things. And generally the answers they have make things worse. But yeah, they do have the ability to forever talk about a culture war, to forever talk about a moral panic, to make new ones that go on every single day. And then they've also learned, because they have become much better Gramscians than any leftist, that if you just keep pushing the fucking culture war, you win. And if you just keep pushing day after day with crazy nonsense, you can break people. Like you and I, like, it's like at some point the overload of like the far right nonsense, you're just like, yeah, I need to lay on the ground for a few days. But unfortunately you can't, because like we don't have the luxury to do that anymore, because they've been able to get in such a position of power now. And I think, maybe to just like reiterate for this episode, it's like we have to accept we lost. Like, we lost to the right in like a very fundamental way, like on a global level. And we need to take a step from that position. I think so many people still think we're in like normal politics world where we're just like, oh, we'll get them in the next election. It's like, no, we have like global earth-shattering things happening and far-right seizure of power. And that just shows a catastrophic failure on so many levels. Everyone from conservatives all the way to the left have picked up on a metric level. And we have to dig ourselves out of this. Like, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Sorry, one more thing. The first step is abandoning these nonsense lines of the far right. Like, it's like, there is nothing wrong with refugees. This is a good thing that we have an asylum system. These are like some of the best things we ever created. It is great having migration. More people means more things going on in the country. That means your country gets stronger and better. That's just how it always has worked. The fear of transgender people. Like, we're expected to believe like 0.5% of the population is causing Western civilization to fall. Like, you're expecting us to believe these things. And we do. We indulge it every fucking day on the internet, on the news. Like, even so many leftists and their media and their output on for content is just like reiterating meta discussions about these right-wing lines. It's like, guys, just reject it. We don't need to have this conversation. Why are we even talking about their politics and how we feel about their politics? It's easy. They suck. It's not ours. Let's talk about our shit.
So
I'm done. Sorry.
What I'm hearing, Rhoda, is that you won't have a conversation. Wow. won't even have a conversation with people? What if they're just confused and they're just lost? And you've shut down their conversation, nay, crucified them for trying to have the conversation.
Look,
they're just little guys trying to have a conversation.
I'm not their parent, priest, or therapist. Like, that's not my game. And I am a fundamental believer that if your approach to beating the far right is trying to denazify people at this point in time, you are taking the most incredibly difficult path to try to change the political situation at this moment. If we want to de-radicalize people in the far right, we can do that after we have broken their political power, because that is what's important. They have a lot of political power. They are literally polling number one in the UK. They have sitting governments right now all across the world. They literally have caused the US, the global superpower, to collapse in a matter of days. Like, this is where we are at. It's a bad time. But I think also, maybe we spin out of the doom a little bit and talk a bit about how there is like opportunity, even though things are really, really messy. And unfortunately, it's about kind of leaning into the global change happening. People have dreamed on the left for like the U.S. empire to fall. It did. It is like that's happening. So it's like, why are people not spending more time pitching their vision for the future in this moment? Like, where the space for ideas is like super, super big because so many leaders are panicked around the world. Like there's opportunity at the moment. Especially like, for example, like things like Brexit. Like, if you want to rejoin the EU, the argument is this moment when Britain and people in Britain are afraid that like they have the U.S. as an enemy. Like these are the moments we are taking, and these are historic moments. And what happens on TikTok today? We can get into this. It's like people were again talking about like, oh, should we abandon woke ideas or like identity politics? Let's have a conversation around this. It's like, guys, what? No, this is so ridiculous.
Maybe we need to change our messaging. Maybe it's the messaging that isn't working. Maybe it's not the oppression and like the resources and like all of the power and the military and like arresting all the journalists and calling all the protesters terrorists and then doxing them. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's the message. Maybe we just have one really, really, really convincing message. Everyone will stop being Nazis. You reckon? Like, maybe that'll work.
Oh, yeah.
Guys, stop being so negative. It's such a waste of time right now because I agree with you. I think I'm still in a very strange way, like, because I feel quite disconnected on a like party parliamentary side. Like, I just do. I feel like because of the level of like watching all of the checks and balances just get like whacked away has just become, and especially obviously with Gaza and with everything that's happened with like seeing that like the UN has struggled to enforce anything, seeing that these different things have failed. We were talking about it the other day. I think for me, there is this is a really important time for building individual, like not in like small networks and communities of people. I think it's really important for people to be organizing online and offline. I think there is like it's also a very good chance to get people away from the social media echo chamber before it does just become nothing but right-wing propaganda. Like, I think it's about 75% of that right now. The other thing that I think is a big opportunity at the minute is that people are more comfortable with turning away their attention from things that they don't want to be involved in. It's gone from like, people aren't just going like, oh, I'm going to boycott one thing. People are like, I'm not going to spend as much money on certain things. I'm not going to go to certain places. The things that they can control. I'm seeing a lot of those larger systems lose capacity to like keep people's eyes in that way. But I think it's really, from my side, I see like my own ability really in just being like a go-between to like hype up an existing community as opposed to being the person who's going to like go on TV or like go and lead the charge in like Parliament or something like that. So that's where I can see a lot of strength. Like, people really, really need community right now, and they need support and they need like mutual aid. And I feel like that's the thing that I'm like really trying to focus on. But I know it's like from your side, you've got a very different experience and skill set with it as well.
I think that's the other thing. It's a lot of people think that politics is a lot of yelling at politicians till they do the thing you want.
Yeah.
I have become a very firm believer that no, politics is not begging a politician to do the thing you want. That's the relationship between a peasant and a lord. That's that dynamic. No, the way a republic or democracy is meant to work is political leader, you should do this. I'm not going to do that. All right, well, now I'm going to work to make you unseated and replace you with somebody else.
Yeah.
Like, that's the next move.
Local party politics as well, like councillors and like little changes that people are making day to day. So the building blocks piece is like something that, I believe.
And then also, like, the other like big thing that I have become like very evangelical about is like very frustrated at people that around when we get to the general election, they're like, oh, I don't like any of the candidates that are picked. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, y'all, if you want to have selection of candidates, you should be in a political party so you can literally select the candidate that you get in the election. It's like, if you're watching that close to the election, it's like, dude, where were you the last couple of years? Like, you can do it. And like, especially like in political parties, if you're in a smaller region, there might be like 10 or 20 people that control who becomes, the person who's going to be the candidate, especially in a lot of smaller parties. These aren't like US style primary elections. Like, these are tiny local party organizations coming up with a list or a single candidate. And so like you and like 20 of your friends could like dramatically warp the way your local party works. And that is what the far right was super effective in doing. Like, for example, in the US, they used the whole Biden administration to basically take over every tiny state, local, and random official. Like, that's how they were able to do all those book bans and stuff, because they took over like school boards. This is like the battlefield. It's not just like the prime minister or the president. It's like all these tiny little positions, because like that's what makes the government work. And I think that's like also like the big lesson, right, from like these mass firings in the US. It's like the civil servants, like all these people make the government work. So it's really important that like people with good politics go into these public service roles, and not just like the traditional ones of like, working in the health sector or things you would traditionally associate with the left, but also like defense and military and like the guys who protect nuclear weapons. Like, it's important that all of these people have like strong democratic values and like have like a strong social awareness, because then you have a crazy person like Donald Trump, and the only line you have is like that all those people who are in these tiny little functionary positions, because those are the people at the end of the day who control the actual running of everything. And also in a situation where things go bad, they're also the people that can stop something from happening in a big way. Either general strike or whatever.
No, I agree. I mean, like I said it a while back with I did the maths on it, and like, so I was in pretty cool. I was in youth parliament, and I got a bigger majority for my youth parliament election than like 50 MPs did, like winning their like seat, like, because it's like people don't vote. Like, the voter turnout is so low, you can make a big difference. I think like I think there's a lot of stuff that people need to be doing like in their local areas now, even if it's just like making things visible. Like, this is actually it's a slight tangent, but it's something that I think is positive and I think isn't appreciated enough in like online discussion, because we are all online and neurodivergent and socially awkward. Not as much, but like the discussion at the moment that like everything online is like losing touch with reality. Like, it is really important to remember there are so many local community groups that do exist, and they're just not online because they don't have time to go on social media. They don't want to make videos. Like, they don't have the resource to be like a big polished charity organization or like a weird MLM, like Stand Up to Racism. Like, they have to like be doing the work. But like in my area, there's a self-run men's mental health group for like working class guys in the area, set up by a guy who lives here, who's always lived here, who saw that a few of his friends had like really hard time with mental health, and he runs a weekly group where guys can talk about their feelings and the situations that they're experiencing, and that's like once a week. On the other side of where I am, there's like a little cafe that is like a local community cafe thing where people have like regroups and meeting up. There's youth groups. There's so many little community things that exist that are people supporting each other in the area, and I really get frustrated when people start saying like, well, everybody needs to get offline. Like, people are offline. People are doing things, help them. Like, if you're online all the time, use your online capacity to support these groups, amplify things they're trying to achieve. Like, I don't understand how we've got to this point of like seeing everything as like, if you have one option that you need to take, because we need people on the ground who are doing stuff grassroots. We need people who go to protests. We need people who do direct action. We need people involved in party politics. We need people educating about things. We need people in care. Like, there's so many things that we need to be able to do. And like, I feel like we're losing the ability to have to have like a it's not collective. People aren't thinking of it as like everything complementing. It's like they think collective decision making is like the Borg hive mind. We have to all do one thing together, or that's it. Like, and I think there are so many positive things that we just don't see enough of, and we don't experience because we're in this weird little internet hellscape.
Yeah, it also just makes me again think of like how the right organizes. It's like there are so many organizations and they do a bunch of overlapping things, sometimes very different things, sometimes more extreme, sometimes less extreme, everything from like paramilitary stuff to like media operations.
Yeah.
All generally pulling in the same relative direction. And that is how you have like a collective move. Like and again, like this is not a tactic they came up with. This is a tactic that was pioneered on the left back in the day, and even before that with like liberal Democratic Republican movements. It's like this is what you do. You have like a huge social, political, cultural movement with a bunch of different people, influencers, stars, music, movies, everything. It's a holistic to use a German term, a Gesamtkunstwerk, like a holistic piece of art.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, like, and like, that's how we should view it. It's a totalizing thing. Like the reason the right is so able to like create this like holistic worldview is because they have a product to sell. They present a holistic worldview. You can have any kind of version of the far right. They have so many influencers. You want a far right workout channel? You got it. You want weird prepper? You got it. You want like trad wife cooking show? You got it. Like this is the thing. They have managed to build a parallel society that you can live wholly within. And they also have been clever to use more mainstream platforms and resources act as a funnel into that alternative world. And there is no left alternative. Like it doesn't exist. Like there is does not exist. It is a fundamental fantasy. And it's even worse because one of the right's lines is like the left controls everything, the liberals control everything. And it's like, no, dude, like you're just projecting. You're basically being like, they have this, and this. And it's like that stuff doesn't even exist. And that is stuff you literally do have. And it disarms us because then we again get back on the back foot. It's like, are we biased? Are we this? Is this
talk about whether or not we're being difficult, guys? I think we're being too demanding. Maybe we are. Like that's the thing. I'm so sick of every time someone throws one of these. Like I'm just not criticizing anyone on the left anymore. I don't know. Like I'm just not doing it. I'm not gonna go in and be like, no, you're doing it wrong. Your discourse is wrong. Like I just don't. The only time I'm doing that anymore is when someone comes in and says, you're doing it wrong. We're like, no, you're doing it wrong. I don't know. Let's all just say that then. Fuck it.
I think
we've got so many but the thing to keep in mind is with the sheer imbalance that there is in the world currently in terms of power, looking at shit like Mick Lynch going on TV in the UK with the train strikes, he changed public opinion about the train strikes whilst he was able to do it. And that was one dude going on TV, being really good against, and then they just stopped putting him on this TV altogether. But like, there are so many examples of like, we almost start to have a grasp. And that's crazy considering the situation that we're in.
Yeah. And I think that, again, kind of like going back to like what we're doing. So, you and I are not huge influencers, we're like 20, 30,000. This is like small media. And it's very important to like understand that like we are still seen by a crazy amount of people, like shocking sometimes how much. And that is big because it is something that we are able to do with no resources just by like grinding out day after day of posting videos. And if I get 100 more people with their own like 20K, 30K each, we're like cranking out millions and millions of collective views. We're presenting information, millions. And with a bunch of different people, individual presenters of these ideas who will do it in their own little special way, in their own style, you create unique individual audiences that might not have any overlap. They might have a lot, but maybe not. You and I do very similar stuff, but like I have a very European international audience and you have like a primarily UK one. And this is like, we're like this close on like TikTok, right?
Yeah.
So
can I tell you what I thought about the other day? Because I know you were saying to me earlier about having like a rant channel. I was thinking about, going through different types of hobbies. I've currently got a little box of polished rocks at my feet here because I've been polishing rocks. Not in a weird, it's not a euphemism. They're just literally rocks.
I can.
And I was thinking, like, I really want to. cute. Like I was like, maybe I should just make a channel that's just like, you know, the rock tumbling things where people pour it out and they show them being all shiny, but just the voiceover is just entirely me talking about like fascism, or just like do like just ASMR. Like actually, there's a wonderful creator on TikTok called Nana, who does like live streams that are ASMR. And I was going through TikTok the other day, and she was just doing like one of the. I'm not going to do it because it makes me uncomfortable. She's doing the close-up thing. She's going, "And I defend the pose, Ray Luigi," and I was like, "That's amazing." She's like, she's such a good creator, but she was just like, "I don't give a fuck. I'm going to say it. And I defend the pose." I'm just like, what? That's what I need. We need like an ASMR leftist. We need like a person who's like doing home renovations, being like destroy, like get rid of landlords. Like we need people to be doing all different bits. So I don't know, maybe Sneak Rock that could come soon.
Yeah,
Let's try that.
Like this was also kind of like the ridiculousness around like the we need a left Joe Rogan thing, and it's like it saw just like the tree instead of the forest. And the problem is there is a forest. We don't have a forest.
Yeah.
The main problem that you guys are stuck on is like you're just seeing one tree, and now we're fighting over how to use the one tree. Such an insane approach to like dealing with the problem. The problem is like there's not a ton of people and money able to provide, you know, us to be like work doing this all the time. Like if you have the same level of cultural impact and to be able to actually win the culture war, which is the vector to change politics. That is what the right has mastered. Do you change culture? Yeah. Politics falls from that. You know,
they just keep re-exposing people to the same thing again and again and again, and we're constantly trying to pivot and adapt and adjust. And they just like, what was it? Like Boris Johnson's whole thing was oven ready Brexit deal. He just kept saying it was oven ready. It doesn't mean anything. I don't even know what that means as a normal sentence. But like his whole thing was it was oven ready. Before that, it was safe and secure. Strong, safe, and secure. Like these basic, repeated dog whistly things that people just keep saying again and again. It works. Like they just, it's annoying, but if you just say something enough times to people, that's why I think it's really important, actually, to answer your first question of the show. I think it's really important that we are constantly normalizing the fact that the views that we have should be they should exist, because people have a herd mentality. If they hear it enough, they just believe it. I'm not going to bother trying to argue with everyone and convince them. As long as they hear what I'm saying, you just got to keep going with that. Just keep making people think that it's normal to think the things that we think, and they'll just start to pretend that they understand what's happening anyway. Like,
yeah,
I can't be bothered. Being polite doesn't work.
No, it is. It's about having a volume of different voices and then a repetition of it. And you can very easily and artificially create these environments. The right does it constantly. You know, even earlier when we were chit-chatting, I was saying, like, you know, if we had like 10 of us, 10 influencers with like 20K each, we all started posting about something one day, we would create discourse right there. Like that's a media discourse, and that would start making people start talking about whatever we were talking about. And it's that easy. And we don't think about like how to utilize these technical tools we have, the relatively small, large networks we do, and how to game these systems, because that is it. Like technical systems we can use. And maybe an idea, I think this might be like inspiration for hopefully someone listening. There is a really big opportunity, I think, in doing like hyper local political content, like you being the person that goes to the council meetings and like cranks out a ton of videos on TikTok talking about all the local issues, because you could become like the political influencers for your like village or city.
The TV reporter, like you could be like the reporter for the Gazette kind of vibe, like they used to have back in the day.
Exactly. And I think like it's about taking these kind of initiatives and thinking, you know, or rather, like, let me tell you, it's like there is an audience for this. Like people are desperate to know what's going on in the world. As the world gets more chaotic, they want to know. That is what the right offers. They offer a ton of answers, and they do it in a ton of different formats, and they have like an infinite amount of influencers. And that's it. It's like we need more people talking about more stuff and different stuff, because I can't talk about everything. You can't talk about everything. We don't know about everything. So we need people from all over the world. And then even more importantly, we need to organize together so that we can use minimal resources effectively. You know, even like signal boosting each other, you know, the effect of just like 20 or 30 of us like reposting each other is really, really big, and it's hugely cumulative.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think we've seen a couple of nice use cases of that recently. It's also something that people can feel part of, like who aren't actually making the videos. I don't know, I've started calling people amplifiers, and I don't think that's an actual marketing term, I'm just saying it, but like there are so many people who consume an awful lot of social media who are very active in like comment sections. Like we've got people who are always active in there, but they're not creating their own content. Like if you're trying to push a specific message out, there's so many ways that you can activate and get involved with it without having to actually just be making videos as well. I think it is like I do feel optimistic about that, provided they don't just literally shut down TikTok or just banners.
Yeah,
like tomorrow. Like fingers.
Yeah, I mean,
but I do feel like there's a lot of possibility there for us.
You know, the problem is it's like until we have like labor protections and a trade union and there is some way to interact with the companies, for example, like when they randomly accuse you of, for example, misinformation or election manipulation, like I've gotten hit with, which obviously is ridiculous.
I think the overall thing is like there's a lot of possibilities and there's a lot of things that people can get involved in. I think a lot of it is just joining the dots now. Think I would love us to stop having the meta-analysis of like whether or not we need to be thinking about whether or not we need to be thinking, or like whether other people the one thing I will say is I think there's a lot of discussion at the minute. We have to build coalition. Yes, we do. We have to do things. We have to act. We have to do things. But I think people sometimes forget that like having people who disagree with you and say that you're not doing enough is like part of the whole thing. That's part of the movement. Like that's part of discourse that pushes movements forward. And at the minute, it feels like people are almost frustrated with people for being idealist or like saying it's not enough. And it's like, what do you like? That's what you need. That you always need those people. And I'm not saying that you should just go, yeah, great work, guys, and ignore them. But like you should. I think people sort of have lost. It's very individualistic. We've lost the ability to sort of see ourselves as something collective. But I think recently I have felt that a lot from us. Like I feel like there's a lot more going on in terms of people working together and communicating. So I feel like that's something that I just want people to, it's just discourse on discourse.
Yeah. I mean, I think people need to stop debating. Like don't get into online debate culture. Do not participate in debate formats. Like go and build something, go and organize, go and find allies. Don't try to like find another leftist that you want to have like a 59, post thread and neither of you agree and you're just angry at the end. Like that does nothing. Like go do your own thing. And I think like the biggest advice I can give to people who are either already activists or like even like kicking around the idea in these troubled times to get active in politics is don't wait for permission from anyone. If someone disagrees with you, just find someone else to work with. Like you're not going to get along with anyone. I've worked in politics a long time and you need to just do stuff that you want to do and get moving on it. And eventually you'll find people that'll work along with you and you just got to keep pushing. And sometimes it'll be really hard. You'll have to work on a project by yourself for a while and that's fine too. It's like, but go and do something. Don't just like sit on your butt and don't just like sit in discourse debate culture because it's a waste of time. And we don't have time.
Debate. Yeah, like I think it's really important to feel like you're in community with people and like to feel like you're connected. And I just don't understand how. I feel like all of that is theater, but you know how I feel.
I mean, debate.
You're right.
Literally,
well,
it's performance.
It is literally theater, but it's not even good theater. Theater used to be cool, at least. There was like some sort of appeal to like emotion and like all of that stuff, and people would like proclaim things, and now it's just like destiny bullshit.
Yeah,
that's what I think we should end on. You gave a really motivational thing there, and then I just brought that in. Sorry.
No, I can rag on destiny for just a moment, but no, I totally agree. Like it's two things. It's everything became destiny because destiny literally performed in like CX or Lincoln Douglas debate, which is just this like rapid fire format in like competitive high school debate. Mm-hmm. And so like that's just how you end up speaking is just like rapid fire talking, just like trying to overwhelm people with debate points, because the way they score it in this debate format is you throw up a bunch of premises and in the next round they need to hit every one of your premises or they're not allowed to rebuttal it in a following. So it's like part of the structure of this debate style that is how you win, is by just vomiting out a bunch of different points, hoping your opponent forgets about one of them. And then you just hammer them on that one because the rules don't allow them to respond. And this is and stupid, and it makes me angry, but this is what he does. And that's why, like, the first time I ever saw him, I was like, oh God, he must have done CX or Lincoln Douglas. And
Well, it's wild.
yeah, I mean, but like that's it. Like that's the secret behind Destiny's style of speaking. And this is different to like what we think of as like historical rhetoric or speech, where it is about having like declamation or giving like extemporaneous speeches or like
Like a vote happening.
or like giving like politic and feeling and stuff. No, like the format of debate he participated in was you vomit a bunch of facts and then say it so fast that you hope your opponent doesn't.
It's actually a logical fallacy. Yeah, there's a straw man and that's a this and that. Like all of these ideas of like how to understand things, which are really valuable, just being like turned into like, it's literally point scoring. You literally get points off of it. I didn't know that you literally got points off it.
Yeah. And
Odd.
I think it's funny because like I did high school debate too, but I competed in student congress. So your speeches are in the style of like a political speech. So it's meant to be inspirational and things. So it's almost like diametrically opposed, right? So like these are improv speeches, but they're meant to be like, you know, the great speeches of American history.
Yeah.
Not like,
Yeah.
mind you. Like,
But yeah.
These are fundamentally different things. One comes up with like the tradition of like Cicero and the great orators of Roman Greece, and the other one comes out of like a psychotic crackhead wanting to do a point system and make competitive speech.
So bizarre. That's such an
Yeah.
interesting concept, though.
Yeah. It's wild. I mean, it gets even more a bit classist because a lot of these debate teams, they hire actual lawyers or like parents of the kids that are lawyers to do all of their prep. So like they'll have pre-prepared stuff to work with that has been created by real lawyers. And these are all like high school kids competing. So if you're from a rich school, like a private school that has a bunch of lawyers working for your speech team and competing against like public schools, you know, from poor cities, it becomes really, really bad.
Well, they literally turned actual issues into a sport where you score points by going fast. Like that, no one. Yeah, so, and then people say, well, actually, I think debate is a great way to convince people of things. No, it's like the whole point of it, but it's literally been designed to turn things that people actually care about into point scoring or literal points for sport.
Yeah, and also like the way we as an audience understand speech or like a debate performance is we judge it on the performance. Like, were they good or bad? Like, did they you know, say things in a interesting way or an engaging way? We're not judging it on like,
and that teaches people like human feeling is like pointless, or like human issues are just a game. Like no wonder it gets to being what it is. Like, and why objectivity is part of white supremacy. What a surprise that it all comes together. It's I think just seeing like human connection in each other and everybody like it's very difficult to say these things sometimes because someone will be like, that's why I think I need to be nice to a Nazi, and it's not that. Like, I think we all know who has shared values and shared goals and is actually working towards those shared goals in our lives. And we know the people who don't.
Yeah.
And it's just with the people that do, give grace to each other. Also, just give grace to anyone anyway if you need to. Like, if you don't understand what someone's saying, ask. Don't just go straight in with your thing. But then again, I know that people, and also let people feel stressed if they want to, because it's a really fucking stressful time. People are scared about a lot of things. Like, gotta let each other have our emotions a little bit. Just like, I don't know, big like group hug around each other.
Yeah.
But also get involved in politics.
Yeah, like have a little grace for one another. Yeah, exactly. As you said, like people are testy, like times are hard. So like it's going to be harder to organize.
Testy
times. And I think one of the, you know, just like one last thought on this like debate thing, you know, people who debate in the style of Destiny or so many other debate bros, they plug in facts that justify the points they're trying to make. That it is not like they are using facts and logic to win. They are finding facts that back up the point they are trying to make and give the illusion through that performance that material reality conforms to the presentation that they're saying. And it is very dangerous in politics because this is not how we should view or understand governance. We should understand governance as a combination between our values of what we would like things to be. So, for example, like I would hope to achieve like no homelessness. Okay, then governance is how do we actually do the thing? And then we have to
Yeah.
judge that based upon like very material things. It's like, oh, well, like if we do the housing construction like this, does this happen? Or like da 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 da. Like these are very technical
Yeah.
questions. These require lots of expertise. These are also things we can like empirically test. And,
Yeah.
you know, so it's like we
Not just like, should people have right?
exactly. So it's like you can't just say like it's all facts and logic, or like there's a natural way to do things, as the far right likes to do. It's like we are doing this because it's the natural way things should be. It's like, no, we as humans have created all of this. It's all artificial artifice. We have willed it into being. We have created these things, and the futures that we want to create, or the plans and policies we want to make, we have to base those upon our values or ethics of what we would like our society to be like,
Yeah.
and then actually use material governance to achieve those goals. And these are not separate. They're not in competition with each other. They are the same effectively. Like you have to have the material wrapping into your ethics and values. Yeah. So that's my spiel.
I was going to say the same thing.
But thank you so much for this wonderful, fun roller coaster of a conversation. I think what you do is very, very important, and I highly, highly recommend everyone to go follow you on TikTok and all the other platforms. You are constantly a wonderful sight in my For You page, and will continue to be so, I assume.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.